JT, good to see you.
It's great to see you too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Well, we talked a little bit before we jumped on here, but I wanted to jump in with you and talk about that number of 40% of people wanting to change their jobs. This is really a staggering figure, right?
It is, and I would argue it's probably even higher than we think.
Wow. Okay.
They're in our space right now. They're talking about the turnover tsunami that we're in the middle of now that we're coming out of the pandemic. And what I've been saying over the last year and a half is that the bigger the disruption, the bigger the innovation. So when you have this amount of disruption in people's lives, when things start to change, they want to change.
Sure.
They have a lot of aha moments over the last year and a half in particular because they've realized, do I really want to keep doing this? Am I happy? Are there other things I could be doing? And life is too short not to really embrace it. So it doesn't surprise me at all, but it's creating quite a bit of upheaval.
Yeah, there's no question about that. I think over the last year or so, a couple of phrases have gone on in my mind is now what, what's next, what's coming up next. And I certainly not alone. We've heard the word pivot overused. But if you look at what someone's doing, and I want to hit on both things, whether it's younger or it's people that are older, but in particular, people that are older or have been in a position for a number of years, it's not so easy to go and say, okay, I'm an attorney. Now I want to shift and go do something entirely different. Do you have to have a resume that really shows what your skill sets are in that other business, or just incredible universal skill sets?
So I love that you're asking this question because I think that's what most people go to is, well, I have to fix my resume. But there's a step before that. And what I tell people is when you're deciding to make a pivot or a career change, imagine you're on the German Autobahn going 200 miles an hour, right? No speed limit there. The last thing you would do is just swerve over. You would want to signal to let everybody know that you're moving that direction. Career pivoting, changing, same thing. Because changing that resume isn't really going to help somebody understand you, what's driving this change, what's making you want to go into a new area. Resumes, by definition, should be pretty dry. They're like toast. They're boring and they're objective. So all they're going to see is what you've done, not what you want to do. So the resume becomes less important in a career pivot. The career story, the connection of the dots, the explaining of the aha moments that are leading to this internal motivation to want to make a pivot becomes far more important.
So it's really more of an emotional resume, so to speak, I guess. So somebody knows that you're passionate about moving into that other area. I love the visual though, because it puts it into perspective.
100%. And what I tell people is this is where your cover letter is actually going to play an enormous role, because if the resume is the toast, the cover letter is the avocado. That's the flavor,
nice.
Right? And that's where you're going to tell that connection story. Cover letters aren't a regurgitation of your resume. It isn't you trying to sell yourself. It's you telling this story of here's why I get you. Here's why I get this job. Here's what is driving me to want to make this pivot. And companies love to hire that because here's an interesting stat. A recent study shows that only 29% of people hired have the exact skill sets for the job. 29%.
Wow.
What this means is that companies are far more interested in hiring the person with the right personality and aptitude for the job. That comes from internal motivation. I can teach you everything you need to know to do that job, but I can't teach you to want to get up and do it every day. And so in this next phase, as we're seeing a hiring boom right now, this is the time to make the career pivot. You're going to see a lot of companies opening up apprenticeships and all these opportunities for people with vast experience to come and join them and say, look, you have no bad habits. We'll mold you. But boy, you really need to have that mindset and be aligned with us in order for us to teach you.
I think that's fascinating. And I actually think it gives people a lot of hope because it lets you know that you don't have to have, another 5-year, ramp up to go into a job that you want, but you have to know why you want it. And that's a little bit easier if you've decided that that's where you want to go next.
100%. So, if you think about it, I would rather a team with this wonderful, exciting, positive energy to learn and grow together than this team of highly educated and experienced individuals who are all very set in their ways, are going to constantly say, been there, done that. That actually can hurt an organization. So you're going to hear across the board of companies saying, I'd rather hire less experience, but I want to hear about your passion. And that is age has no factor there. And that's why times like this, I get really excited for more seasoned professionals who want to make the shift because you're not a newbie in the workplace. You're just new and excited about their environment. You are going to quantum leap in that place because you're going to know how to upskill yourself, get yourself really to the next level faster than, say, a younger person who has no work experience.
Right. I think what's fascinating, and I'm always looking at stats, but I found the stats as women over the age of 55 are the fastest growing age gender workforce category, according to the Bureau of Labor Stats. And I thought that was really fascinating because if you think, so my mom, they get to a certain age and it was one job and then it was kind of time to wind it down and retire a little bit. And now those second acts, next chapter, whatever it is, we're seeing women do just incredible things, finish an entire career in one industry and literally start over in another. A lot of them are name brand people that we've seen in terms of big makeup brands or big digital brands, but others are, just people that right now want to do something different and have this whole 20 more years to do another career.
100%. My mother was one of them. Oh, nice. My mother raised her children and went back to work until she was 76 years old.
God bless her.
And I think the reason for that is that women just want to work. So they can put their egos aside and say, I don't need that big status or title that I maybe had in my first act career. Been there, done that. Mm-hmm. What I want to do is enjoy what I'm doing for the next 20 years and have fun when I go into the office every day or whatever environment it is. Because plenty of studies show that, believe it or not, the longer you work, the longer you live. And I think a lot of women want to live nice, long, full lives.
Yes, we do. We'd like to be here in another 20 years talking about the same thing and helping the next generation. So speaking of that, let's talk about, you do so much career advice for LinkedIn. And I think it's fabulous that they're providing that resource for people, because I think that was missing at one point in terms of, you could go on there and meet people, but you also needed some help in doing that. You're also giving a lot of advice on TikTok, and I spent sometime last night and I couldn't stop scrolling your feed. You've done an incredible job of being engaging, interesting, but easy to understand. And those three things those don't always go together. So kudos to you for that and the following.
Oh, thank you so much. That means the world to me. So, I was on LinkedIn for many years and I owe them a debt of gratitude because, a decade ago, they invited me to be one of their original influencers because I was providing instruction on how to use the platform. And I'm forever grateful for that. And that's really where I learned that people needed basic advice. Don't try to talk over them. This isn't about using multisyllabic words. Let's just give them that information that they need so that they can succeed. But even still, there's a very set demographic that sits on LinkedIn. So when we came across TikTok over a year ago and realized that this was going to open up a whole new group of people that probably weren't on LinkedIn, we jumped at the chance. Also, my fascination with this idea of giving advice in 60 seconds. I'm obsessed with that because I think if you can watch 61-minute clips over an hour, you've learned 60 things. Also forced me to get very clear and intentional in what I wanted you to understand. So I've loved the journey on TikTok in terms of upping my own game. But I get really excited when you say that. That's exactly what I hoped people would do. Just say, instead of being on Facebook or other things, I'm just going to take 15 minutes and absorb 15 things and be smarter for it. And that's been the strategy all along on TikTok, and it seems to be paying off.
Yeah, it really is working. And the other thing that's great about it is that it's actually giving TikTok that credibility, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of being a place where you can go and learn and not just a place where you're, if you ask somebody on the street, what is TikTok? Oh, it's a lot of people dancing and entertaining. Well, not really. I mean, there's a lot of useful information now from influencers like yourself. And that's giving it a kind of a different look and for a different audience as well, I assume.
Yes, it's so funny. TikTok just announced that they're about to invest quite a bit of money in building it out into a recruiting platform and giving employers a way to get access to this talent, which I always predicted it would do. This is such an awesome place for you to share your expertise and knowledge and not be judged on your past work track or experience. So let's go back to those career pivoters. You probably have something you're really passionate about and know a lot about, but maybe that's not what you've been doing professionally. TikTok is the perfect place to start just sharing your information and knowledge so that when you do want to land a job there, an employer can go and listen to your TikToks and say, this person has the passion, the energy, and certainly the baseline knowledge to be hired. And TikTok figured that out. I expect this to be a huge game-changing platform for recruiters, both in terms of employers finding talent, but talent pivoting in their careers.
I mean, that's brilliant to be able to see that. And you can definitely see that crossover with what you're doing right now. And you can understand if I'm a recruiter or I'm looking to hire somebody and I scroll through, for example, your feed, I know exactly who you are, what your brand is, what you want to do, the message you want to convey. So it makes it a lot easier than shuffling through that toast of a resume, I guess, right?
100%. That's what we're talking about, is that ability to give that information in a way that holds interest. And here's the thing, we're a storytelling society now. We're raised on social media. We're not going to go back. People want to work for interesting companies and interesting leaders. So the other thing I've been saying is that if you're an executive, you have no choice. You need to start doing video. You need to start sharing your knowledge, because anybody under the age of 35, the first thing they're doing is looking you up online, looking your company up online. And if they're not seeing a compelling message, they're not going to work for you. And I have proof of that every single day with the executive clients that I work with. So I just encourage everyone to just start. You don't need 1 million followers on TikTok. That's not the intent. The intent is for you to create this place where when somebody wanted to learn about you, they really could scroll through and learn it all, and where you can control the message, because this is something you need to know. Brand or be branded. Not being on these platforms says as much about you as you being on the platform. So why wouldn't you want to control the message?
Well, that's a good thing to keep in mind. It really is nowadays, because we didn't, a lot of people that are in a certain generation didn't grow up that way. So they're like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to use that. I don't love being on camera. I cover my camera. And that's what I wanted to get to. So I grew up in front of the camera just from sake of what I do for a living. A different kind of camera, albeit. So that is it is a camera, but you just present a little bit differently, right? Because I've done the news for so long. However, it is so important to be comfortable in front of the camera. And I know you're right about that. And by the way, workitdaily.com, if you haven't checked it out, go check it out, and we'll make sure the links are down below, because you've got some great resources. Again, these bite-sized resources that are very clear of what you're going to read, quick reads and smart reads. But you say 4 reasons why professionals should get comfortable on camera. Why is that so important now, and how are you judged by that?
Most definitely. So I'll tell you, one of the number one complaints I'm hearing from HR professionals that I'm working with post-pandemic is that they never realized how bad their executives were on camera. And that was because what happened? Everything went to Zoom. So they had executives who their executive presence was based on them walking into a room and commanding and probably saying less, almost being intimidating. But now we're all like the Brady Bunch, if you remember that. We're all a square, in that square. And so you have to be able to be relaxed and convey a sense of authority and accessibility and build connection through that video. And it's just non-negotiable anymore. Again, if you want to lead people, if you want to inspire people, if you want to gain credibility, this is an area where you have to get comfortable. And I have to ask you a question, because you said you grew up on camera, but you're now doing things like this. How different does it feel, this environment on camera versus what you have to do, which is I think the news is so unforgiving. You have to be on point. But here, I'm hoping you're seeing a little bit of a difference. What do you think?
I feel a difference in my presence and in how I think about it. So I'll tell you, there was a bit of a learning curve at first for me, because I was used to being kind of buttoned up and in front of the camera and presenting the facts. And now doing podcasts or web shows, it's a little bit different, because I have more of my personalities involved in it, right? There's room for error that I don't always feel like there has been. It's gotten different, in news. It's a little bit more room for error now, but it's taught me a different side of my personality on camera. There's no question about that. And it's helped me teach other people, how to be a little more authentic in their presentation on camera, because it's so important. And the camera does not miss anything. In either one of those places, it doesn't miss anything. It knows who you are. It knows if you're authentic. It knows if you know your brand. It knows if you really believe in your message. Yeah,
well,
I believe
and
that.
I totally agree. And I think that, and I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think that people probably now see, like you said, a whole nother side of you that is easier to connect with.
100%.
And it's right. You get to be you. Yeah. And I think that's, again, what I compliment TikTok for, was it allowed us to be not as buttoned up. And I've had so many more people say, I feel like I know you and I've never met you. I think that is amazing. That is what I want from my audience. I want to be connected with them. I'm here to serve you. Yeah. And you've been serving people for years on camera in that one format, but how nice is it to have another?
It really is. And I didn't realize what a difference it was. And it's funny. Being on camera is, I don't know. I guess it was just such a natural part. It's a natural part of what I did every single day. But doing this, and you kind of feel the difference, but people talk to you more openly too. And that's the neat thing, because I think because they're seeing your surroundings, and even if they're not seeing your surroundings, you're able to just have the time to talk to people too, and you're able to instantaneously answer them, right? So in news, we used to talk at people years ago. Now we're talking with people, and that's the difference,
I
for me
completely,
anyway.
and I think
Yeah,
we get better results because you
a
are
hundred
actually able
percent.
to give them so much more when they can tell you more specifically what they're trying to achieve or what
Yep.
they're dealing with, what they're struggling with. I've just enjoyed coaching so much on TikTok in particular. That audience is the kindest, most supportive, most grateful audience I have ever had in my
Yeah.
career. And I just, again, I think it's because of the medium.
Yeah, I think so too. What is it, the number one question, I guess, that you have women that are, we say women over a certain age. I can't wait till we don't have a workaround for women who are, 45 to 60. I keep saying, like, why do we have to have a workaround for that to explain who we are? But what is that number one question you're getting for women that are maybe 45 plus that are trying to figure it out and want something different, whether they've gone through a career change, whether they've been pushed out, where we've seen a lot of women can't go back to their careers right now. Those numbers are staggering as well, because they're taking care of children at home and they're not able to go back. What is the big question you're seeing from a lot of those women right now about either how to go back or how they pick another career?
I'm so glad you asked that question. The universal question I get, it comes in different forms, but it all boils down to the same thing. How do I fit myself into the work world right now? Where do I fit in? How do I make it work with my unique situation, the requirements I have for a job, the constraints I have, the skills I have? Where do I fit in? And the first place you start is with some self-assessment. You have to understand what your strengths and preferences are. You are a business of one. You are a service provider, and that employer is going to be your customer. None of us are going to, it's useless to do what we call spray and pray, which is just apply everywhere and hope something sticks. You want a very strong brand message. You need to know what you can and can't do, what you want to do, how you create value, how you save or make them money to justify the cost of hiring you. And then you want to create a much more targeted list. So women are always shocked when I say, we're going to figure out what your strengths are, and then we're going to create an interview bucket list. We're going to start with 10 companies that you identify, that passion we talked about, where you can see yourself working there, and you can tell me how the skills you have now would connect with what they're doing. Because again, you have to sell yourself to them. But once women understand that, and this is what I love about women, we're so resourceful, and
Yes.
they underestimate themselves constantly, and yet they get this. When I explain this and they figure it out, the moment you get them in front of somebody, off they go. They tell their story, There's energy, there's enthusiasm, and people say, well, sure, I'll hire you. And they're always shocked. They can't believe it happened. I got an interview with my bucket list company. They loved my story and my cover letter. They're going to give me a job. They're letting me work remote. They just are constantly shocked by this, because this is not taught in school. And employers don't really necessarily want you to know this. They would rather control the market. But this is where women are resourceful. They don't take no for an answer, and they learn what they need to.
I was trying to figure out what it was about certain women's stories. I've been a storyteller forever, and I've been curious, though, in the last maybe 4 years, what it is about these certain women's stories that were so inspiring, right? When they went from one place, what they were used to doing, and they were scared. I never say that. I don't think people are fearless. I don't think that that's a thing. I think all of us have fear, right? But there's a little pocket in between that they jump over to get to the next place, and they find that bold in them, right? They find that internal thing that lets them get there. And I agree with you that I find that women have that so many times over. Where do you help women find that bold in themselves to make that career change? Because it is a scary thing.
You know what's really funny? It happened to me, obviously, working daily, and all of this would not be here if I hadn't gotten to a point where I was more afraid of my future and it staying the status quo. And I think that's what's happening right now for a lot of women. When I hear their story about the big jump they made, they just couldn't imagine another year, another 5, another decade of this going the status quo. They had to make the change, and it was just worth the risk, worth putting their ego aside, worth making mistakes. Failure is just experimentation, right? If you keep getting up and learning from it, there is no failure. And they just got to a place where they were ready, because they couldn't take another day in the situation they were in. And so for me, I'm generally, I hate to say it, but really agitating that in women and saying, really, is this what you want? This is okay. This feeling of sadness and feeling handcuffed, golden handcuffed, this is what you want for the next 20 years. And then also what I like to say is most of them want to be role models. Most of them have people in their lives that look at them. For me, it was the birth of my first daughter, and it hit me. She is going to watch me. She is going to take her cues, and she is going to see that I am not happy. So I have to figure this out so that she can see it's possible. And when I coach them through that, that's usually when it hits. Then when we find the spark, we find the joy, we find the passion, they're off and running.
I think to myself, and it's such a simplistic statement and probably not, maybe it's not the right direction, but I always say when I'm afraid, what's the worst thing that can happen? Tell me the worst thing that can happen. And then let's work back from there, because get to the end, tell me what that is that you're so afraid of. And when you break it down, it's just not that bad at the end of the day. Right. And you can always figure out a solution somehow.
It's so true. It's so true. And I think that's where seasoned women, we've had enough of those moments in our life and we look back and we figured it out. And so we'll just do it again.